Please welcome to the stage, Michaela Murphy!
Hi, thank you. Happy Halloween. Are you guys into Halloween? Yes. Do you believe in ghosts? Yes. Oh, awesome. You know, the writer Edith Wharton, in the intro to her book, Ghosts, wrote, I do not believe in ghosts, but I am afraid of them. And that sentiment describes my boyfriend in the 80s, Larry, perfectly. He did not believe in ghosts, but he was afraid of them. He was an actor at this theater company, Shakespeare and Company, which was this resident company up at Edith Wharton's 42-room mansion, The Mount. And the year after I graduated from college in the mid-'80s, I was 21 years old, I was hired by Shakespeare and Company to be an actor and to perform in these plays during the summer. And then throughout the rest of the year, a couple of actors would stay on, and we would perform in venues and schools all throughout New England. And part of our pay was that we got to live rent-free in this mansion, The Mount. And so now the Mount is this beautiful, beautiful house. And at the time when Shakespeare and Company was there, it hadn't yet been restored. So there were rooms that needed paint, and there was like a leaky roof and some holes in the wall, and like the ornate plaster ceilings needed fixing. But you could still see the grandeur that was like this premier American Gilded Age home. You know, the time like pre-income tax era of the Astors and the Morgans and the Vanderbilts. So during the summer, there would be tours that would go through this house. And then at night, people would pack picnics, and they'd sit on the lawn, and they'd watch Midsummer Night's Dream or another Shakespeare play, and it was really magical. And after the summer, the house would close up, and most of the company would like go out, you know, to different parts of the United States. And there were 4 actors, Larry and I included, who moved into this house. Now, during the summer, I'd heard these stories from some of the actors who had lived there about ghosts that lived in this house. And there were sightings of Edith Wharton or Henry James or some of her other literary friends. And I was so mesmerized by these stories. I wanted so much to see a ghost. And part of this was because a few years earlier, my dad had suddenly died. He was only 41 years old, and I was 16. And so this idea that ghosts existed, that maybe I could see my father again and have this connection, and it wouldn't be like he was gone from my life forever. So I really wanted to see a ghost. So we move into this house. So this house is 42 rooms. And on the first floor, there's like the kitchen, and then there's this big dining room, and a ballroom where we would rehearse, and a library, and a sitting room. And then on the second floor were all the bedrooms. And Edith Wharton's bedroom, which was like a corner room of the house, that had furniture in it. There was like a bed and like some bedroom furniture. And then the Henry James room had a bed in it. But the other bedrooms were pretty empty. So we moved like a futon and like milk crates, the actors, like young kids. We moved into this room, and this room was really cool. It was like 16-foot ceilings. It had these 3 huge windows, and this marble bathroom with this extra long tub that was extra deep. It took like 45 minutes to fill this tub up. It was wild. So we move into this house, and above the second floor, the third floor, it's like where all the administrative offices were. And I guess these were like smaller rooms, like probably where like the household help lived, kind of like Downton Abbey-ish, right? So that was upstairs. So we move into this house, and right away, it was like, it didn't feel frightening, but you would like when I was ever there alone, it would feel like someone was coming down the hall. It would be like, hey, how you doing? Like, I'm in here. And there wouldn't be anyone there. And then like one time I thought I saw somebody pass by the bedroom door, and I went out into the hallway and there wasn't anyone there. And after we lived there for like a week, I'd mentioned this, and my boyfriend Larry was like, I've had the same experience. And it was like, oh my God, like, oh my gosh, is that like what the ghost thing is? But we didn't really know. So that was what was happening. So then this one night, it's like the middle of the night, and Larry wakes up. He's like, wait, Michaela, wake up. So I wake up, and he is freaked. And I'm like, what happened? What happened? And he's just like, oh my God, oh my God. He woke up, and he said the room filled up with this really bright, bright light. And he got so scared he woke me up. And I was like, oh my God. And I was so bummed that I missed it. I didn't see it. I was like, and he was really freaked out. He was like, I don't want any part of this. I was like, ah. So we go downstairs and we're talking about this. And one of the other actors living in this house is this woman. And she's like really into crystals and chakras and that book, Seth Speaks. She's like, you know what you can do? You can get a ghost box. Now, apparently there's this thing, it's called a ghost box. And it can be any box, apparently. And you just leave it open. And this is where the spirits can go into. So Larry's like, but I'm thinking, I don't want a ghost box in our room because, we're a couple and we've talked about getting married, but we're still two different people. But will the ghost be able to discern this autonomy, or was it going to see us like marriage, we're one, So I didn't want a ghost box in the room. So when I say this, the woman's like, there is another thing you can do. And so she tells us that we can, he can walk through the house with a sage stick and burn the sage, and he can announce to the presence there that he doesn't want to see ghosts. So he's walking through the house burning sage, saying, I do not want to have any ghost and I'm behind him going, but I do. He doesn't, but I do. And after that, I'm walking around if there is such a thing, trying to encourage the ghosts. I'm nothing to be afraid of. So I want to see a ghost. So about a week after that, so there wasn't a TV in the house at the Mount, but there was down at the caretaker's cottage, which was down this dirt road, maybe a quarter mile. So it was at the time when that TV show Hill Street Blues was on. So all the other actors and Larry, they go down to watch this Hill Street Blues episode, and I have the whole house to myself. And so I'm going to take this bath. So, I start the process of filling up the bathtub, which is filling up a swimming pool. And, and I lock the door to the bedroom. And it was when that album, Sting's album, The Dream of the Blue Turtles came out. So I put that on. I get everything all set up, light some candles, and get into the bathtub, which is so deep I can almost float in it. So I get into the bathtub, and all of a sudden, Dream of the Blue Turtles, it's really loud. Wicked loud. And at first I'm like, is that really that loud? And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I get out of the bathtub and I go over to the stereo and it's on full blast. And I know I didn't put it on full blast, but whatever. So I turn it down halfway and I get back into the bathtub. And the second I get into the bathtub, it's full blast again. And so I get out of the bathtub and I go over and I can see it's full blast and I know I didn't do it. And I have this moment of fear. But then I remember I have been walking around for weeks overtly inviting the ghosts into my life, And I've been to charm school, and this is Edith Wharton's house, and she was this writer about social mores and etiquette and manners. What am I going to do? No, ghostis non gratis. It's so I just decide in that instance that I'm not going to be afraid. So I just turn the stereo off. Okay, fine, we won't have music. And so I get back into the bathtub, and I'm in the bathtub, and there's this big window in the bathroom, and all of a sudden, this window starts shaking. And then it's closed, and the curtains on it start to blow in. And I'm watching this, and I'm like, okay, bath's over. So I get out of the bathtub, and I get dressed, and I'm in the house by myself, and then I can hear this faint piano music playing downstairs. But there isn't a piano in the house. So I go out into the hallway, and I start to go downstairs, and then I kind of it's fine. What am I doing? It's fine. It's the ghost. This is what I wanted, right? So I go down, and it's kind of like Kevin Allison was talking about, the perpetuated election day. It's like that. I go to all the rooms, and it's the piano music is in, the next room. And then I go into the next room, and, the piano music is still in the next room. And then I can hear what sounds like somebody's moving a piano upstairs. So I go back upstairs and it's coming from the third floor and there's no one there and it's totally dark. So I get a baseball bat and I start to go up the steps to this third floor. But there's nothing there and it's total darkness and I'm calling out Kevin, who was one of the other, I was are you there? And there's nothing there. And then I'm kind of getting and I'm oh, you know what? I should go get Larry. Larry should participate in this. So, so I go out and I start to walk down this dark dirt road towards the caretaker's cottage. And it's so dark. That's what frightens me. I'm I shouldn't do this. So I go back in the house And now, like, after being, like, out in the darkness, it's, like, really loud. And it's like, oh, my gosh, what is going on? So I go back into the room, and I relock the door, and I'm sitting in bed. And I can kind of convince myself, that maybe we need a new stereo, and maybe, like, the windows need insulation. And, like, these are, like, annoying neighbors. And the thing is, it's like, movie soundtracks have done a lot for ghosts. Like, had John Carpenter's Halloween theme song been playing during this whole thing, I would have been freaked out of my mind. But it wasn't, so it was just like this noise, and it wasn't like anything else was happening, and so I finally fell asleep. And while I was sleeping, Larry came home, and I knew this because I woke up with a start at 2:04 a.m., and Larry was next to me, but he wasn't the only one in the room. At the end of the bed, there was this guy. But he wasn't looking at me. He was kind of looking off like this. And he's smoking a cigarette. And he's wearing this gray jacket. And he has like this maroon scarf on. And he has a mustache and dark hair. And I'm looking at him. And I can see him really clearly. And I'm like, and he's looking off. And he's not even aware of me. And then all of a sudden, I start to hear this. And I think, is that Larry? And so I bend down to hear Larry, and Larry's breathing pattern is totally different. And I'm like, Larry, wake up. And when he wakes up, it all goes away. And so then he's just like, oh my God, we got to get out of this house. And I'm like, oh my God, I saw a ghost. Like, it's real, it really exists. And so I'm so excited. So after that, I walk around like the medium of the mount, and all these people are coming. And I'm like, yes, I've seen the ghost. No, it's true. There's nothing to be afraid of. And so I hold court and tell all these stories. And as I'm telling these stories, there are other actors who are saying to me, oh my gosh, you should talk to this guy, Steve. He was an actor who had worked at the company years before. He used to live in that room. Something happened to him there. And I'm like, what happened? They're like, you really got to ask him. So throughout the rest of the year, I'm open to it, but nothing happens. I never see another ghost. And then that summer, there's a reporter from the Berkshire Eagle who's getting an article ready for the fall about the ghosts, of the Berkshire mansions. And someone tells him, oh, you've got to talk to Michaela because she's seen a ghost. So he comes up to me, and I'm like, oh, yes, I've got a story for you. So I start to tell him this story, and I describe the ghost to him, and he's just like, is there anybody else I should hear? And it just so happened that actor Steve was visiting the Mount that weekend. I was like, oh my gosh. Yes, we should go find this guy, Steve, because I've never heard his story. And he's apparently got some wild story that happened in the same room. So he's like, awesome. So we go and we find this guy, Steve, and I tell him what we're doing, and the reporter, and Steve's just like, no, man, no. And we're like, we're like, no, it's going to be. And he's like, absolutely not. To the point where we're like, we totally want to hear this story. So the reporter, is really savvy. He's like, hey, how about if you tell it to me off the record? And, those magic words, and so the guy's like, off the record? He's like, yeah, totally off the record. He's like, you're not going to write about it? He's like, no, I'm not going to write about it. And he's like, all right, I'll tell you. So we're like, all right, let's hear this. So he tells his story. He is in the same room, and he wakes up in the middle of the night, and the room is totally illuminated, but the room is completely different. It's like how it would have been decorated 100 years ago. Even his bed is in another part of the room. And there's this guy in the room, and he describes the guy as wearing a gray jacket and a maroon scarf, has a mustache, and he gets totally freaked out, and he closes his eyes. And then he peeks to see if the guy's still there. And when he peeks, the guy is above him and is doing something with his hands, and he's just totally freaked out. So he closes his eyes, and he gets this overwhelming feeling like this guy wants him to jump out the window. Now, it's only the second floor, so he might break a leg. It's not like this, death plunge. But he still feels like this guy wants him to jump out the window. So he peeks again and hears this. And so he's panicking. It's it's not stopping. And so he just goes deep within himself, And as he describes it, all of a sudden this overwhelming word comes to him, God. And he makes this commitment in the moment that if this stops and goes away and never happens again, that he will dedicate his life to God. And he opens up his eyes and the room is back to normal. And this guy, Steve, actually stops being an actor and becomes a priest. For real, totally for real. So like the reporter and I are sitting there like, wow. And so I say, I totally did not have that experience at all. Like, it wasn't frightening to me at all. And he's like, well, it should have been. And I'm like, well, and he's like, you don't know. These spirits, like, they're lost. They're not at peace. They're not in the afterlife, and they're not alive. You don't know what they're looking for. You don't know what they want you to do. I was like, yeah, but I was just, like, hoping that I could maybe see my father again, because I miss him so much. And he takes my hands and he says, you should be grateful that your father's soul is at peace and that he's not wandering around, because, Michaela, that's what death is. And so after that, I didn't see another ghost. And maybe it was because we had a ghost box that we kept on the mantle, the fireplace in our room, because I do believe in ghosts, and I'm not afraid of them, but I respect them, and I do wish that they would rest in peace. Thank you.